Are you sitting here? Hare Krishna. Haribol, everyone. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 study, class number 12. We're going to continue in the ninth canto from verse 37 after the chapter of Shloki. And we're going to try to read through the ninth chapter and try to read through the 10th chapter as well. So,
we're going to do kirtan from here. So I don't have my harmonium. So we're going to do cartels. And I'm going to be right here with you all. Can we see? Yeah.
can we see?
Different view. Can we see them? Up there. Gallery. Okay. Let's take a deep breath in. Sip the breath in through your nose. Fill up. Open mouth. Exhale. Let it go. As we settle in here together for Shastra class and bringing our hearts and minds and energy towards this transcendental sound vibration. Starting with our opening prayers. Inhale, sip the breath in. Om Jnanatimurandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasade Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo bolo.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Let's sing together.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Bol.
Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol,
Hari Bol,
Hari Bol,
Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada,
Prabhupada, Prabhupada.
Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. We're also pleased to welcome my dad, Steve, and Apsi, who are our special guests here in Toronto.
Hi.
Om Jnanatimirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarupshascha Kripa Sindhupyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribol. All right. So just a refresher, we're halfway through chapter 9. We heard Krishna give very, very essential instructions to Brahma about how he, as the supreme person behind even Brahman and Paramatma, is really the most important aspect of spiritual realization, and how he existed before the material creation, during and after, and he should be aspired for in all ways. And we only really read those 4 verses in purports because they're very lengthy. Prabhupada chooses to really invest a lot of time and energy and philosophical clarity, quoting a lot of verses to establish and really back up the points he's making. Spiritual life is like it's like being in a way, it's like being in a court of law, or being a scientist. You have to quote cite previous authority. You can't just be like, oh, I think it's like this. Prabhupada is backing everything he's saying up extensively. So let's take some reflections from the gathered devotees. Anything that stood out? We had some nice reflections in chat, just to get the ball rolling before we step into a bit of a lighter section and just finish off the chapter. What did you hear? What stood out for you?
Okay, I'm not gonna sit there and not be able to say anything, those pregnant pause, but thank you so much. Beautiful kirtan. And so nice to meet you, Shami Pras's mother. The verses, the nutshell verses gave me a lot of hope. There was clarity in, that there is a supreme being, and there, that no one is ever going to merge into that. We're all distinct and unique, and there's not the idea that, this possibility that, you know, as some people might say, I'll get to a place where I'll become one with the divine. It's very clear that that's not the message. And there's also messages about um, that you can never be too fallen to have a chance at serving the Lord with devotion, and being a devotee is in the heart and mind, and I like that there was one line in the purport that really stuck. A lot of them, because I put three different
Mm,
sections in it, but um, it is one's mind that generates different kinds of bodies of suffering, different kinds of material pangs for suffering, different kinds of material pangs. Um, I often say this to people that I work with in recovery, because once people are removed from substance abuse, they don't need physically, they don't need anything. Their body is recovered from that. But it's the mind that brings them back to say, oh, this time it's going to be different. This time I can
mm,
do it. This time something else. So it struck me, that my mind can get caught up in so many different things, that if I'm not placing my mind on a spiritual path, I have the chance of going to this path where I'll be lost in all sorts of different addictions. Whether it may not be a substance abuse, but it could be the internet. It could be something that's not spiritualized. And as it also says in these verses, if the material world is not connected to me, it's the darkness. It's part of my energy, but it's the dark part of that energy, and I need to not go to that. I need to be staying in this lighter part of energy. So thank you.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that section. One of the sections you were referring to in your comment was about how no one is too new, nobody's too fallen for bhakti, where Prabhupada gives in his elaborate purport to, I think, the 36th verse, the final verse of the four. He says that over and over again, how let them come to devotional service full of knowledge or full of ignorance, or well cultured or completely uncultured. It doesn't actually matter, and he supports it too. It's not just like a sentimental idea. He supports it with verses that this is actually like the mood that Krishna um, has himself, and therefore it's the mood that we all carry. You know, from Brahma all the way down. That we're just extending ourselves. I mean, in one way or another, everybody is always in some degree of ignorance, right? In their conditioned life. So we're not here to like play like the pot calling the kettle black. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I really appreciated how in chapter 8 and 9 there was a tie to disciplic succession. Um,
Mm,
in chapter 8, we are to hear the message through the disciplic succession, to be more humble and less speculative, and asked questions from the guru and more senior disciples. So it like reinforces that. And then in chapter 9, it goes even further to talk about how Lord Brahma was initiated by Krishna, and the second initiation with the mantra, and how he's the original spiritual master, and that's how the disciplic succession started. So I really appreciated how both chapters kind of brought in this thing that we hold very dear to our practice.
yeah. Yeah, that personal touch. Spiritual realization ultimately isn't just transmitted through theoretical knowledge. It's practical and applied, and it's there's an indelible way in which when we are associated with somebody who's applied that spiritual knowledge in their own life, then their example is so powerful, and serving them is even more valuable than trying to serve the supreme oneself, so that you can follow in their footsteps. And yeah, that was very much here in the relationship between Brahma and Krishna, and Prabhupada pointing out in these purports that that principle is eternal. Thank you.
I'll add to both those fabulous comments that, we're so busy in our material conditioned lives, just being distracted and doing things and just whatever we're doing, so much distraction, that if you have the good fortune of exposure to this concept that Krishna is the source of everything. He's running the show. And if you come to think about that and embrace that in any way, how could you not want to have a stronger relationship with him? So that's kind of what I took from those seed verses is, wanting to be closer to him or to try to get closer to him. And when you are closer to him, it just seems like the more natural. In my reflection, I called it the happy path. Like it's just is the more natural way to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, Krishna says as much in the 12th chapter that this bhakti devotional service is very natural and easy, and trying to approach Krishna's impersonal aspect is very difficult because you have to perform austerities. There's a lot of difficulty in that, and it's not. He doesn't recommend it, but there's an expression: to know them is to love them. The more we hear about Krishna, the more lovable he becomes, and the more we try to serve him with love, the more he opens himself up to be known. Thank you. Jai, any other reflections before we jump in? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 37. O Brahma, just follow this conclusion by fixed concentration of mind, and no pride will disturb you, neither in the partial nor in the final devastation. Krishna is saying here that if you try to practice bhakti in this way, then no matter what happens to you in the course of your service, you'll stay steady. 38. Shukadeva Goswami said to Maharaj Parikshit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, after being seen in his transcendental form, instructing Brahmaji, the leader of the living entities, disappeared. 39. On the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the object of transcendental enjoyment for the senses of devotees, Brahma, with folded hands, began to recreate the universe, full with living entities as it was previously. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is the object for fulfilling the senses of all living entities. Illusioned by the glaring reflection of the external energy, the living entities worship the senses instead of engaging them properly and fulfilling the desires of the Supreme. In the Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya 13.2, there is the following verse. Akshnov palang tvadursha darshanang hi tanov palang tvadursha gatra sangaha jiva palang tvadursha kirtanang hi sudurlabha bhagavata hiloke. O devotee of the Lord, the purpose of the visual sense is fulfilled simply by seeing you, and to touch your body is the fulfillment of bodily touch. The tongue is meant for glorifying your qualities, because in this world a pure devotee of the Lord is very difficult to find. Originally, the senses of the living entity were awarded for this purpose, namely to engage them in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or that of his devotees. But the conditioned souls, illusioned by the material energy, become captivated by sense enjoyment. Therefore, the whole process of God consciousness is meant to rectify the conditional activities of the senses and to re-engage them in the direct service of the Lord. Lord Brahma thus engaged his senses in the Lord by recreating the conditioned living entities to act in the recreated universe. This material universe is thus created and annihilated by the will of the Lord. It is created to give the conditioned soul a chance to act, to return home back to Godhead. And servants like Brahmaji, Naradaji, Vyasaji, and their company become busy with the same purpose of the Lord, to reclaim the conditioned souls from the field of sense gratification and return them to the normal stage of engaging the senses in service of the Lord. Instead of doing so, that is, converting the actions of the senses, the impersonalists began to make the conditioned souls senseless, and the Lord also senseless. That is improper treatment for the conditioned souls. The diseased condition of the senses may be treated by curing the defect, but not uprooting the senses altogether. When there's some disease in the eyes may be cured to see properly. Plucking out the eyes is no treatment. Similarly, the whole material disease is based on the process of sense gratification, and liberation from the diseased condition is re-engagement of the senses, to see the beauty of the Lord, hear his glories, and act on his account. Thus Brahmaji created the universal activities again. 40. Thus, once upon a time, the forefather of living entities and the father of religiousness, Lord Brahma, situated himself in acts of regulative principles, desiring self-interest for the welfare of all living entities. 41. Narada, the most dear of the inheritor sons of Brahma, always ready to serve his father, strictly follows the instructions of his father by his mannerly behavior, meekness, and self-control. And sense control. Yeah. 42. Narada very much pleased his father and desired to know all about the energies of Vishnu, the master of all energies. For Narada was the greatest of all sages and greatest of all devotees, O king. 43. The great sage Narada also inquired in detail from his father, Brahma, the great-grandfather of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied. 44. Thereupon, the supplementary Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, which we're reading right now, which was described by the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the father, Brahma, to his son, Narada. Purport: although the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken in 4 verses, it had 10 characteristics, which will be explained in the next chapter. In the 4 verses, it is first said that the Lord existed before the creation. One should not misunderstand by wrong interpretations that the Lord spoke only 4 verses and that therefore all the rest of the 17,994 verses are useless. The 10 characteristics, as will be explained in the next chapter, require so many verses just to explain them properly. Brahmaji had also advised Narada previously that he should expand the idea he had heard from Brahmaji. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed this to Srila Rupa Goswami in a nutshell, but the disciple Rupa Goswami expanded this very elaborately, and the same subject was further expanded by Jiva Goswami, and even further by Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We, Prabhupada's talking about himself, we are just trying to follow in the footsteps of all these authorities. So Srimad Bhagavatam is not like ordinary fiction or mundane literature. It is unlimited in strength, and however one may expand it, according to one's own ability, Bhagavatam still cannot be finished by such expansion. Srimad Bhagavatam, being the sound representation of the Lord, is simultaneously explained in 4 verses and in 4 billion verses all the same, inasmuch as the Lord is smaller than the atom and bigger than the unlimited sky. Such is the potency of Srimad Bhagavatam. 45. In succession, O king, the great sage Narada instructed Srimad Bhagavatam unto the unlimitedly powerful Vyasadeva, who meditated in devotional service upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, on the bank of the river Saraswati. 46. O king, your questions as to how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the Personality of Godhead, as well as other questions, I shall answer in detail by explanation of the 4 verses already mentioned. Purport: as stated in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this great transcendental literature is the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge, and therefore all questions that can be humanly possible regarding the universal affairs, beginning from its creation, are all answered in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The answers depend only on the qualification of the person who explains them. The 10 divisions of Srimad Bhagavatam, as explained by the great speaker Srila Shukadeva Goswami, are the limitation of all questions, and intelligent persons will derive all intellectual benefits from them by proper utilization. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 2nd canto, 9th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Answers by Citing the Lord's Version. Jai. Great. Usually at the end of chapters, I pause to take reflections. I don't know if we have any. If there are, that's great. Do you have any reflections? Otherwise, we can jump in to chapter 10.
I just like how,
Yeah.
is that me? That's Nancy.
Nancy, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's really interesting to me that that we're given these chances to deny the truth with the recreation, that all of we have to fight to understand the truth. It's not just that it's given to us. And the recreation, the material world, all the stuff that could be enticing us to go off a path of devotion is there. And so we have to sort of fight to get back on that path. And it's like part of the cycle that, okay, the new cycle starts and I'm going to give you all these toys and this bright, shiny stuff that you can go for, or you can come back to the truth. And it just interests me. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Good point.
To build off of what Nancy just said, I really loved the statement, that like Brahma recreated the earth, and for the people to re-engage their senses to basically see God in all. So it's like, hey, Krishna left, going to recreate this world and hope and give people the opportunity to see Krishna and everything. And I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how both purposes exist side by side. From one point of view, the universe exists for me to try to carve out my little spot as the owner and controller. And the opportunity to try to do so is always there. But from Brahma's point of view, as a great devotee, it's really just another opportunity for every living entity to try to re-engage their senses in terms of Krishna and to see him in whatever their situation is. And he's giving facility for that. He's just enabling that. So it's like, it's almost like a parent giving like an allowance, to their child. The child can do whatever they want with it, but the parent is trying to teach them how to like actually be responsible with the resources that they're given. So at some point they grow up and they start to, not just run to the corner store and buy candy or whatever. Like have a better idea. But both are available side by side. Yeah. You sure?
I loved how Prabhupada put it in the purport of one of those verses, I can't remember which one, about how we can get all of everything can be explained in 4 verses. And so that's like the zoomed in, and then the zoom out but it also can be explained in the 17,000, however many more, or even just
Right.
the 10 deeper, the list that we're going to go into in chapter 10. But I was just thinking of like the zip drive. You've used that example before of like a flash drive or a zip drive, and you double click it and it expands
Right.
so much more. And that we have so many details given to us through the Vedic scripture that's sort of like that expansion of that zip drive. If you want to know more, there's more you can know. If you want to bring it all consolidated down to 4 simple things, like 4 verses, here it is right here.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's one of the greatest things I think about this tradition is that there is such a wealth of detail. Love is in the details. It's very difficult to develop love if you don't have any like personality, you have nothing to actually relate to. All these pastimes and forms and names and qualities and associates and paraphernalia. And, this is it just gives so much substance to the devotional experience and depth. And at the same time, the Bhagavatam is 18,000, just under 18,000 verses. And, there's descriptions about how in other planetary systems, among the societies of those who live for longer, the Bhagavatam is actually bigger. It's difficult enough for us to read 12 cantos, 18,000 verses. But Krishna's pastimes are not encapsulated just by that. If you go to Indraloka, what does Indra know? Whatever he knows is so much more than what we have access to. There's more details there. It's like comparing, the local corner library to like the historical library of Alexandria, where every passing ship had to give a copy of every manuscript they had. It became like the world's biggest library once. Like it's all relative, but Krishna, we have that to look forward to. But if we could just get through these 12 cantos here with our short 100-year or less human life, that would be terrific. And again, keep reading them. Great. Chapter 10. Chapter 10 has a very extremely bold title. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions, is the title. Okay. Text 1. I just want to see here how many verses. There are 51 verses. Okay. So, all right. This is our 12th class. We're going to read as much of this chapter as we can today, and then pause, and then we're going to finish. Is that?
Yeah, Rukmini will speak next week.
Yeah, we have special guests, Rukmini and Anuttama Prabhu will speak next week. And then if we haven't finished this chapter, we'll finish it in class 13, the week after that, and we'll have some time for reflections on the whole canto. So this may be like a stop halfway in the chapter kind of day. Verse 1. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manus, the science of God, returning home back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. Yeah, that's a famous verse, actually. Atra sargo visargascha sthanam bhushanam utayah manvantare shanukata niroto muktirashrayah. Those are the 10 topics. No purport. Text 2. To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum. Summum bonum is Latin. It means the supreme good, the ultimate truth, absolute truth. To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages. Verse 3. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements: fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as sarga. That's the original creation. Whereas the subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called visarga, secondary creation. Purport. In order to explain the 10 divisional symptoms of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 7 continuous verses. The first of these under reference pertains to the 16 elementary manifestations of earth, water, etc., with material ego composed of material intelligence and mind. The subsequent creation is a result of the reactions of the above-mentioned 16 energies of the first Purusha, the Mahavishnu incarnation of Govinda, as later explained by Brahma in his treatise Brahma Samhita 547 as follows. The first Purusha incarnation of Govinda, Lord Krishna, known as the Mahavishnu, goes into a yoga nidra mystic sleep, and the innumerable universes are situated in potency in each and every hair hole of his transcendental body. As mentioned in the previous verse, Shrutena, or with reference to the Vedic conclusions, the creation is made possible from the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly by manifestation of his particular energies. Without such a Vedic reference, the creation appears to be a product of material nature. This conclusion comes from a poor fund of knowledge. From Vedic reference, it is concluded that the origin of all energies, namely internal, external, and marginal, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as explained herein before, the illusory conclusion is that creation is made by the inert material nature. Thus, the original creation is directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Param Brahman, and the secondary creation, as a reactionary result of the original ingredients, is made by Brahma. Thus, the activities of the whole universe are started. 4. The right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind, under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruitive work.
Can you explain what the manus are?
Yeah, I think Srila Prabhupada is going to explain the manus. Doesn't really explain them so much in this purport. Okay, so the manus, as been mentioned before, they are considered to be empowered incarnations of the Lord. Something like in a lifetime of Brahma, which is by our calculation, I think it was 230 trillion years, 320 trillion years. In his lifetime, there are a few hundred manus, right? So they have some leadership service for a few million years. And manus, they're essentially like empowered to pass on the rules and regulations of how to actually live. The word man, actually, and even in English, mankind, human, man, woman. I don't know if woman actually comes from the word for man, but man, mankind, they're from this word manu, actually. Pretty sure Prabhupada is going to talk about the manus more. Right. What's that? There are 12 manus in each day of Brahma. Yeah. Text
So
5.
Manu is a division of time?
Manu
Or is
is
it
not a division of time, it's a title, it's a position.
position? Are they the
And
progenitors?
yeah, they're like the father of the progenitors.
Oh, the father. Okay, thank you.
Right. Text 5. The science of God describes the incarnations of the personality of Godhead and his different activities, together with the activities of his great devotees. This is another major topic. In other words, these 10 things, these 10 items are considered to be the 10 main topics of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarga Visarga, primary and secondary creation. Atusarga Visarga Stanam Posham Utayaha. The situation of the material world, maintenance under the Lord. Utaya means the creative impetus, karma. Manvantaresha Anukatam. So Manvantara, the succession of Manvantars. And then Isha Anukata, this is here we have like the activities of the avatars. Nirota Mukirashraya. We'll get to those. Okay, so text 5. During the course of the existence, this is purport of 5. During the course of the existence of the cosmic manifestation, the chronology of history is created, recording the activities of the living entities. People in general have a tendency to learn the history and narrations of different persons and times, but due to a lack of knowledge in the science of Godhead, they are not apt to study the history of the incarnations of the personality of Godhead. It should always be remembered that the material creation is created for the salvation of the conditioned souls. The merciful Lord, out of his causeless mercy, descends to various planets in the material world and acts for the salvation of the conditioned souls. That makes the history and narrations worth reading. Srimad Bhagavatam offers such transcendental topics of the Lord in relationship with great devotees. Therefore, the topics of the devotees and the Lord are to be given respectful oral reception. Another famous verse here, verse 6. The merging of the living entity, along with this conditional living tendency, with the mystic lying down of the Mahavishnu is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after they give up the changeable, gross, and subtle material bodies. This is a famous verse because it defines liberation as, well, Prabhupada will talk about it, but as something beyond just letting go of what we're not, but the eternal situation we have beyond the changeable, gross, and subtle material bodies. Purport. As we've discussed several times, there are two types of living entities. Most of them are ever liberated, or nitya muktas, while some of them are ever conditioned. The ever conditioned souls are apt to develop a mentality of lording over the material nature. And therefore, the material cosmic creation is manifested to give the ever conditioned souls two kinds of facilities. One facility is that the conditioned soul can act according to their tendency to lord it over the cosmic manifestation. And the other facility gives the conditioned soul a chance to come back to Godhead. So after the winding up of the cosmic manifestation, most of the conditioned souls merge into the existence of the Mahavishnu personality of Godhead lying in his mystic slumber, to be created again in the next creation. But some of the conditioned souls who follow the transcendental sound in the form of Vedic literatures, and are thus able to go back to Godhead, attain spiritual and original bodies after quitting the conditional gross and subtle material bodies. The material conditional bodies develop out of the living entities as forgetfulness of their relationship with Godhead. And during the course of the cosmic manifestation, the conditioned souls are given a chance to revive their original status of life with the help of revealed scriptures, so mercifully compiled by the Lord in his different incarnations. Reading or hearing of such transcendental literatures helps one become liberated, even in the conditional stage of material life. All the Vedic literatures aim at devotional service to the personality of Godhead, and as soon as one is fixed upon this point, they at once become liberated from conditional life. Text 7. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being, or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme fountainhead, the absolute truth. Verse 8. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called adhidaivik. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the adhibhautic person. See if Prabhupada talks about this in purport, otherwise I'll elaborate. Purport. Okay, so he talks about the nature of the demigods and how they're controlling different, although they're part and parcel of the Lord, they're higher living entities, they control different manifestations of the universe. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have our senses, but the senses are controlled by superior controlling deities. We cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of light is the sun. The sun god, the sun deity, sun demigod, is in the sun planet, and we, the individual human being, or any other being on this earth, are all controlled by the sun god as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are also as much living entities as we are, but one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the adhyatmic person, and the controller is called the adhidaivic person. All these positions in the material world are due to different fruitive activities. Any individual living being can become the sun god or even Brahma or any other god in the upper planetary system by a higher grade of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods by lower grades of fruitive activities. So every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled. That which distinguishes the controller and controlled, that is, the material body, is called the adipautic purusha, right? So there's the material body, like any material body that we're inhabiting. We have this, I can see this body, right? That's why the verse says, that which you can see with your eyes, that's the adipautic person. Someone can look at this and say, this is Shamya, right? But it's just, that's the aspect of me, that's my material body. Within that, I'm dwelling as a unit of consciousness. That's the what is it? Adhyatmic person is the terminology given in the verse. I'm the indwelling, embodied soul. And other embodied souls in the cosmos can actually be given some agency to control over the instruments and different aspects of the material senses. So those who are overseeing hearing and sight and smell and so forth, from our point of view, they're actually mediating in the process of engaging our senses in the world. We're a living entity embodied in a material body, engaging with aspects of the material energy which are themselves kind of governed by other living entities. Hence our dependence at every step. We're dependent on our own body. We're also dependent on the oxygen we breathe, the air, the light, the water. You can't taste anything without moisture in your mouth. You have to have the air function to smell things. You have to have, all these things, different media, different mediums. So that's kind of a very technical aspect that this verse is talking about. Verse 9, all three of the above mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter is independent of all, and therefore he is the supreme shelter. Right? From the purport. For example, the sun controls the power of our vision. We can see the sun because the sun has its body, and the sunlight is useful only because we have eyes. Without our having eyes, the sunlight is useless, and without sunlight, the eyes are useless. Thus, they are interdependent, and none of them is independent. Therefore, the natural question arises concerning who made them interdependent. The one who has made such a relationship of interdependence must be ultimately completely independent. This ultimate source of all interdependence is the supreme truth, or Paramatma, the supreme soul, who is not dependent on anything else. He is svashrayashraya. He is only dependent on his own self, and thus he is the supreme shelter of everything, right? This presentation, this very philosophical presentation, is here because these 10 topics of Bhagavatam are given, including the material creation, the different elements, and it's coming to the point of Nirodhar Muktir Ashrayaha. Ashrayaha, the supreme resting place, the supreme shelter of all the other topics. That which manifests the creation, secondary creation, the demigods, liberation, that which doesn't have any cause of their own. It wasn't created, isn't dependent on any other factor. That's the 10th item. That's the supreme source. That's one of the 10 topics of Bhagavatam, and it's the primary topic, but we're getting this very technical presentation so we can see how to separate all the other topics from that independent source, right? Otherwise, people have worshipped the sun, or we can worship money, or we can worship, somebody who's more powerful than you. Because from a relative point of view, they can appear to be God. But the real definition of God is that which everything depends on, that which is completely independent of everything else. Text 10. After separating the different universes, The gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusha Avatara, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhotika. This is a callback to chapter 7, 8, 9, a little bit. The different Purusha avatars were there, hearing about the mechanisms by which Krishna and his incarnations actually manifest the different material universes. So it's a little bit technical again, but here it is. Text 11. That Supreme Person is not impersonal, and therefore is distinctively a nara, or person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nara, and because he lies down on that water, he is known as Narayana. Could I trouble you for some water as well, please? Thank you. So there's your etymology of the word Narayana, because he lies down on the water of creation. 12. One should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time, and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all, exist by his mercy only, and as soon as he does not care for them, everything becomes non-existent. 13. The Lord, while lying on his bed of mystic slumber, generated a seminal symbol, golden in hue, through external energy out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone. From the purport. At the stage of non-manifestation, the living energies remain potent in the Lord, and when they are let loose in the cosmic manifestation, they are exhibited differently in terms of different desires under the modes of nature. Such differential manifestations of the living entities are conditional states of the living entities, right? Different bodies, different places, different circumstances. The liberated living entities, however, in the Sanatana, eternal manifestation, are unconditionally surrendered souls, and therefore they are not subject to the conditions of creation and annihilation. Thank you. So this creation takes place by the glance of the Lord from his bedstead of mystic slumber, and thus all the universes and the Lord of the universe, Brahma, are again and again manifested and annihilated. Verse 14. Just hear from me. This is Shukadev speaking now. Just hear from me how the potency of his lordship divides one into three, called the controlling entities, the controlled entities, and the material bodies in the manner mentioned above, right? The demigods, the embodied living entities, and the actual bodies. 15. From the sky situated within the transcendental body of the manifesting Mahavishnu, sense energy, mental force, and bodily strength are all generated, as well as the sum total of the fountainhead of all the total living force. 16. As the followers of a king follow their lord, similarly, when the total energy is in motion, all other living entities move. And when the total energy stops endeavoring, all other living entities stop sensual activities. From the purport, each and every electrical instrument depends fully on the total powerhouse. The total powerhouse depends on the reservoir of water for generating electricity. Water depends on the clouds depend on the sun depends on creation, and the creation depends on the movement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. 17. The living force, being agitated by the Virat Purusha, generated hunger and thirst, and when he desired to drink and eat, the mouth opened. 18. From the mouth, the palate became manifested, and thereupon the tongue was also generated. After this, all the different tastes came into existence, so that the tongue can relish them. This is a summary of material creation, and if I'm not mistaken, we already had, from a different angle of vision, another kind of summary in the 7th chapter, right? So this second canto repeats itself. This vision of the material creation is repeated in different ways in the Bhagavatam. Generally, as we go across the cantos, the different repetitions become more and more centered on the fact that they're coming from the Lord, and less technical, less about like the effect and more about the cause. 19. When the Supreme desired to speak, speeches were vibrated from the mouth. Then the controlling deity fire was generated from the mouth. But when he was lying in the water, all these functions remained suspended. 20. Thereafter, when the Supreme Purusha desired to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated. The nasal instrument and odors came into existence, and the controlling deity of air, carrying smell, also became manifested. 21. Thus, when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God, Sun, the power of vision, and the object of sight all became manifested. Purport. This universe is the universe is by nature dense darkness, and therefore the total creation is called tamas, or darkness. The night is the real feature of the universe, for then one cannot see anything, including oneself. The Lord, out of his causeless mercy, first desired to see himself and all the creation as well, and thus the sun became manifested. The power of vision for all living entities became possible, and the objects of vision were also manifested. This means that the whole phenomenal world became visible after the creation of the sun. 22. By development of the desire of the great sages to know, the ears, the power of hearing, the controlling deity of hearing, and the objects of hearing became manifested. The great sages desire to hear about the self. From the purport, the scientists are eager to hear about the physical laws working in material nature. They are eager to hear through the medium of radio and television about things taking place far away from them on other planets, but they should know that the power of hearing and the instruments for hearing were given to them by the Lord for hearing about the self, or about the Lord. Unfortunately, the power of hearing is misused in hearing the vibrations of mundane affairs. The great sages were interested in hearing about the Lord through Vedic knowledge and nothing more. That is the beginning of oral reception. Oral means AU, oral, sonic reception of knowledge. 23. When there was a desire to perceive the physical characteristics of matter, such as softness, hardness, warmth, cold, lightness, and heaviness, the background of sensation, the skin pores, the hairs on the body, and their controlling deities, the trees, were generated. Within and outside the skin is a covering of air through which sense perception became prominent. 24. Thereafter, when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, the two hands and their controlling strength, and Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifested, as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigod. 25. Thereupon, because of his desire to control movement, his legs became manifested, and from the legs the controlling deity named Vishnu was generated. By his personal supervision of this act, all varieties of human beings are busily engaged in dutiful occupational sacrifice. From the purport, there is no harm in having different propensities in life because every human being is proportionally independent to chalk out the plan of their life by different occupations. But one should make it a point in their life to know perfectly well that they are not independent, absolutely. One is certainly under the control of the Supreme Lord and under different agencies. Knowing this, one should make it a point that by their work and the result of their labor, they serve the Supreme Lord as prescribed by the authorities, expert in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord Vishnu. 26. Thereupon, for sexual pleasure, begetting offspring and tasting heavenly nectar, the Lord developed the genitals, and thus there is the genital organ and its controlling deity, the Prajapati. The object of sexual pleasure and the controlling deity are under the control of the genitals of the Lord. 27. Thereafter, when he desired to evacuate the refuse of edibles, the evacuating hole, anus, and the sensory organ thereof developed along with the controlling deity Mitra. The sensory organ and the evacuating substance are both under the shelter of the controlling deity. Purport: even in the matter of evacuating stool, the refuse is controlled, so how can the living entity claim to be independent? 28. Thereafter, when he desired to move from one body to another, the navel and the air of departure and death were combinedly created. The navel is the shelter for both, namely death and the separating force. 29. When there was a desire to have food and drink, the abdomen and the intestines and also the arteries became manifested. The rivers and seas are the source of their sustenance and metabolism. 30. When there was a desire to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of the mind, the moon, determination, and all desire became manifested.
was great. Thank you.
Okay. Take care, Afsi. They got to head
That
out.
was great.
Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good additional class.
From the purport, the activities of the mind cannot begin without the manifestation of the heart, and the heart becomes manifested when the Lord wants to see the activities of the material creation. 31. We'll just read a couple more verses and then take some reflections and stop for this week. The 7 elements of the body, namely the thin layer on the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone, are all made of earth, water, and fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air. These 7 gross elements are described in Ayurveda, by the way. Purport. The construction of the whole material world is prominently made by 3 elements, namely earth, water, and fire. But the living force is produced by sky, air, and water. So water is the common element in both gross and subtle forms of all material creation. And it should be noted herewith that due to necessity, water, being most prominent in the material creation, is the principal element of all the 5. 32. The sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences, happiness and distress, and the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation. 33. Thus, by all this, the external feature of the personality of Godhead is covered by gross forms, as those of planets, which were explained to you by me. Okay. Let's pause here. This is a natural pausing point. All right, we're on verse 34. Okay. Now we'll take any reflections or questions or anything that stood out in the first 33 verses of the 10th chapter. We're, almost through this chapter, which means we're almost through this whole canto. Any reflection from the canto is actually okay at this point. We'll take a couple of reflections and then pause, and then we'll finish in 2 weeks. Nancy.
Yeah, I'm a little confused.
Okay.
So it's a lot here, right?
Yeah.
It almost seems as if is this Garbhodakshai Vishnu deciding, I want to see things now, and therefore now it's time for me to develop the sun planet. I want eyes. It's almost, it's not like there's lumps of clay sitting there, and these things are starting to spring up in the bodies of people, right? It's that he's sort of developing what would be the blueprint
Yeah.
for the children to come after him. But it seems like it's taking us this time. It's like, okay, now maybe I should see. So it's like it's this curiosity that comes from the beginning to the end and saying, okay, now I got to make sure that they evacuate. If they're going to eat something, they better evacuate, and then so they can keep on eating. And it's just a interesting thing. But I was getting confused at he's building himself so that it can be the example of what should be built into man.
Yeah, so it's like material creation is an echo, right? Brahma's secondary creation follows the primary creation. We're hearing about the primary creation here, if I'm not mistaken, of Garbhodakshai Vishnu, the primary material elements. Brahma takes them and shapes different planets and living entities. But the Lord's presence actually manifests the possibility of such things, right? Because that's the point, is he has a form. He has a spiritual form. He doesn't have a material form. But he has all these aspects to him. That's why they actually exist, even in a material reflection form, right? In the material world. So the capacity for such things it actually becomes possible because the Lord, as his Vishnu incarnation, is situated in the world, right? Then within the material energy, you have like a reflection of his form. Now we're not dealing with eternal forms and eternal senses and spiritual senses. We're dealing with material senses with a beginning and an end, but they're modeled after the blueprint, right? So he has his eternal form and it's going on. And the capacity for all those other things is now manifested. And Brahma takes that, right? And works a material secondary creation to enable living entities to have whatever body they deserve and desire, and play it out in whatever background of material universe they're, entitled to, all with those different aspects of Krishna's external energy. Yeah, it's kind of like a reflection of spiritual reality.
I was struck by in verse 30 when we're speaking about how when there was a desire to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of the mind, the moon, and determination and desire became manifested. And then Prabhupada wrote in the purport right near the end, therefore the material mind of the living entity develops when the super soul sits on his heart. And I reread it like 6 times. I'm like, wait. to imagine that, to think of that. The material mind of the living entity develops when the super soul sits on his heart, after which the mind, the controlling deity, the moon, and the activities of the mind, namely thinking, feeling, and willing, all take place. From super soul sitting on this bigger heart, this greater heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just wild. To hear about how super soul contributes to creating the heart, and how the heart was formed because there was the desire by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right, to understand his own activities and energy.
Yeah, to witness and know all the functions of the mind, desire, attraction, aversion, all the functions of the mind. The capacity for a material mind exists in us as a reflection of the Lord's spiritual mind.
Right.
Right.
And the mind comes after the heart and is supposed to be situated in the heart.
That's what it says, yeah.
Right. And so often, I think if we bring it to our terms, like so many of us can get disconnected from what our heart is telling us to do and get lost in what our mind thinks we need to do. But actually, the mind even comes from the heart.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a semantics thing, because what you're talking about, the division between like intellect and feeling, is not exactly what's being said here, and is my understanding, because not that there's no truth in what you're saying, but in the Sanskrit, um, the mind, the mental activities, they're associated physically with this area of the body, the heart.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And the idea of like intellect, rationality, and feeling being separated with head and heart, that's a later idea. That's a modern idea. That's not a Bhagavatam idea. It's not a Vedic idea.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and is that because the Jiva Atman and the Paratman reside behind the heart?
presumably, yeah. That what you said about the Lord sitting in the heart of the living entity,
yeah,
would seem to indicate that,
right.
The mind is the most important of the senses.
Right.
It's the enjoyer and the receptacle, the receiver of all the other objects of the senses. Whatever you see, hear, taste, touch, goes into the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Effectively, like in the kind of like in these kinds of descriptions, you see it in Bhagavad Gita, you see it in other parts of Bhagavatam, other Upanishads, and different things. The what I'm trying to say, like there's really, it's really about the heart and the mind are considered non-different, right? Like they're used in a non-different way. They're basically like about thinking and feeling, both of them. They're considered to be almost synonymous, even in the vocabulary. Like they have different words, manas, mind, and hrid, heart. We see in this word, in this verse, hridayam, the location of the mind. Hridayam literally means the heart. But yeah, we can make a note of that and see when it comes up again in our readings, because it does come up. I've noticed it. Very, very nice reflection. Nancy, did that help you? My comment on your question, was that
Oh
helpful?
yeah, a little bit. I
Powerful,
still
right?
have to go back and read it.
Yeah.
It's I sit back and say, well, okay, so God's creating himself essentially, but
He's
it's
not
as you
creating
said, it's a
himself.
reflection. It's
Yeah.
a reflection of his transcendental self to bring that into the material world, and then that is the blueprint for what was going to be created from us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just is, it's wild. I just sort of expected, I mean, I had read this a long time ago though, and I was just sort of expected that Brahma was gonna just go dink. And then we're gonna be there, but it's like, oh, what does that mean? And this makes sense that there has to be some sort of a guiding principle, it's of what needs to be done in order to develop the body.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because the categories of existence are more or less eternal as part of not they're not eternal, they're all material, but they pre-exist, they predate the actual occupation of any living entity in any of the categories, right? Like we may think, um, there's all these different species, or there's all these different places, all these different ideas, and we've developed them, or developed over time, or by some impersonal idea like evolution or whatever. Even if those things are there, the categories for the potential for such existence has already existed. They're accounted for. They're in a big Excel spreadsheet, right? Brahma is like working that. And so it's like, you go over there, you go over there, you're over here, you're over here, you have this, you have that. And from his point of view, it's all very elementary. Just like children may think like, yes, I have the choo-choo train and I have like the rubber ducky. And it's like, I have attained this, but these are all just toys that the parent is portioning out according to their own intelligence. So I just find it really interesting and kind of touches on what you're saying, that all the categories, they pre-exist anybody occupying those categories. And even Brahma's work of like fitting people in the roles, what pre-exists that is what we're hearing about here is Vishnu showing up, and like his existence makes possible all these different things like hearing and seeing, and because he hears ultimately in the spiritual issue, he sees and he thinks. So Jai, anything else? Any more questions? Anything that's you're ruminating on? Okay, let me just remind myself where we got to. We're at 33. We didn't get to 34, right?
Tandavin said we did.
We did 34?
No, we didn't do 34.
Oh, he was saying you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I'll just pick up at 34 next week. Great.
Thank you so
Almost there.
much.
Well, I won't read it next week. We'll have our special guest, which is even better. But we'll pick up at 34 in 2 weeks. Exciting.
Yes. Well,
See
thank
the
you so
Prabhupada.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your attentive ears. Perfection of the ears, right? Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. See you next week and the
Thank you.
weekend.
Have a nice vacation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in.